Hi, everyone. My name's Wendy Castle. I'm a registered dietitian with One Bite Nutrition. I'm happy to have Nikki Bomar here with me, also a registered dietitian. And we're just going to go over how to make weight loss sustainable. A lot of people make weight loss goals and they may be successful, but sometimes they'll notice that their weight yo-yos back. So we just want to go over some tips and tricks on how to make that sustainable. So Nikki, what is one of the first steps that you could recommend to somebody who's trying to make weight loss sustainable in a habit?
Yeah, so the first thing I would look at is those goals, right? Looking at our habits. What did I used to do? What do I do currently? What's my goal of what I want that to look like? Um, I think that it's important to look at the changes that we've already made as well as the changes that I want to make. And so if we can look back and see, well, I have already increased my water intake and I've been doing great with that. Perfect, right? One thing we don't have to worry about, so then we can add a different goal onto there as well.
Absolutely. So like making sure that one goal is accomplished and really it's more of a habit and not really something that you're working on before you move on to the next one.
Yeah.
What about trying to like control your environment to help you be successful with weight loss?
Yeah, I think it's important to know that there's some things that are in your control, but there's some things that you don't have control of, right? Um, but if you focus on those things that you don't have control of, we're not going to be very successful because we can't change them. We don't have control over them. So, looking at things that are within your control, such as how you manage stress, your activity, your hydration, are we sleeping well? Am I sleeping enough? Am I sleeping too much? And then, of course, the balance of those meals, right? We have at least some control over all of those aspects.
Yeah. How often would you recommend somebody eat if they're trying to diet and lose weight?
Yeah, so for pretty much anyone, I recommend about every 3 to 4 hours and looking at your schedule and seeing, okay, I know that I have a big gap between, let's say, lunch and dinner, for example. That's a perfect time for a snack to go in there. And what we're getting at with this is that blood sugar. So even if we're not diabetic, that blood sugar is what's running the show, especially for those hunger cues. Your blood sugar does manage partial of those as well. And by that 4 hour mark, all the glucose or the carbohydrates that we have eaten, it's kind of done what it's going to do to our blood sugar, and we've used it or stored it for later. That's going to signal that hunger. So, of course, we're hungry after, that 4 hour mark of eating. So, knowing that that's going to happen and scheduling that about every 3 to 4 hours can help you get ahead of that curve.
Yeah, absolutely. What about portions? Everyone talks portions. Some people like you can have unlimited vegetables and stuff like that. What is your tips regarding portion size?
Yeah, so with portions, I think it's important to know that portion size may not equal serving size exactly, right? We all just have seen those nutrition labels. We know that there's a serving size on there. That serving size can be tweaked for the company's purpose, for marketing purposes. And so knowing your actual portion sizes rather than serving sizes can be really helpful. Okay, can I eat all of this? Should I eat all of this? Those are two very different things to look at. Um, but right, the things like the fruits, the veggies, those are things that we can use. Okay, if we're gonna eat more than the recommended amount of them a day, that's probably the ones we want to go over on. But that's also something that your registered dietitian can work with you on and see if that is needed to do as well.
Yeah, that was always one of my pet peeves. I'm like, why can't we have standard measurements so that people can like accurately compare two labels? Because it's really hard to figure out what to eat if one's two-thirds of a cup and one's a half a cup and you're in the store and you don't want to do a lot of math. So,
Make it
it,
easy on us.
yeah, the portion sizes make it a little bit easier. What about like if you wanted to like count macros or like if you're looking at like, some people are like low carb diet or, what percent do you recommend to, your average client, not somebody that's got like a medical condition, but just somebody working towards health, towards weight loss, but is generally healthy.
Yeah, and right on that note too, I think, like you said, it's important to know that everyone has different macronutrient needs, right? But a good starting point I like to use is 50% carbs, 25 fat, 25 protein. It's a nice, even, simple split there. Um, Because when we look at macros, right, if we have these exact numbers we're trying to get to, we're very rarely ever going to get to those exact same numbers, you know? So it's easier to have a little bit of a range. But that's a nice, simple goal to try to work towards when we're looking at macros.
Excellent. Awesome. And then, one of the things that I found super helpful is, I've got a lot of patients, super well educated. They know they've been doing this diet thing maybe for decades. Um, can you kind of just tell us how a dietitian can support these patients in their weight loss journey?
Yeah, so that keyword there is accountability, right? It's really, really hard to be accountable to yourself. And many people do say, okay, well, I can do it myself, like I can rely on myself. They tend to, quote unquote, fall off there, or fall off the train, fall off the wagon, whatever they want to put in there. That's where that registered dietitian comes in, right? Creating both manageable goals together, right? I think that patients tend to come in thinking, I'm going to tell them their goals. No, I can help you guide your goals, but I want to know what you want to work on first. Um, and I always tell my patients too that I am going to tell them if I think their goal is unrealistic or if we have too many goals going on, kind of like we talked about earlier of, okay, let's set this goal, accomplish it, let it become a habit, then let's add extra goals onto it, right? Not just pile them on top of each other. And checking in, again, checking in for those accountability checks if we're consistently is that key there. Usually about every 2 weeks is what I recommend for that. Um, and some people like to, log their food or water or activity on apps or on our system that we use. Some people like that, some people don't. So that's why it's even more important to work with your dietitian to see, okay, what's actually going to work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some patients that, they eat really habitually. So once they track it, for a couple of weeks, they kind of know. They don't have to keep putting it in because they know what they're going to have. But for some people that eat very differently, tracking is super helpful. And if they, struggle with portion size and stuff like that. Um, how do most of your patients track progress? How do they know they're being successful other than maybe just numbers on a scale?
Yeah. So the non-scale victories are definitely my favorite ones. The ones that you don't expect, right? When we step on that scale, we are expecting that number to be what we have in our, right? The idea that we have in our brain. Um, but when we look at weight, also, I think it's important to note that that changes based on many other things than just your simple, like actual body mass, right? So usually at a maximum, right? I encourage my patients to weigh about every 2 weeks, which usually coincides with their appointments. But I always encourage them to not weigh as often, even as that, maybe even once a month, once every other month when they feel comfortable weighing. Maybe it's at, their 3 6 month doctor appointment. Just that way we don't, weighing too often, that can lead to those disordered eating habits and that loss of motivation too, right? If we're expecting what that number is going to be on the scale and it's not there, the motivation tends to plummet down.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, we all know activity plays a role. In regards to counseling your patients, what do you tell them about physical activity and how to combine that with their nutrition so that they can meet their goals?
Yeah, so with activity, I feel like it's important to find something that you enjoy doing, right? If it's something that feels like a chore and that you just genuinely don't like doing it, you're not going to be successful with it long term. Right? That's why we're here today is talking about the sustainability feature of it. And so even if it doesn't look like what you feel like is like the ideal exercise routine, moving in general is what's important. So having the weight loss come from both, moderating our food and having that exercise amount, that's going to make us way more likely to actually keep that weight off, especially if we can continue with the activity as well. And whether that, I go on a walks or I'm in the gym for 2 hours, both of those things are still going to help and make a difference on your weight loss journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk to a lot of patients about unintentional exercise, like, if you're out there doing yard work or if you're cleaning the house, like your muscles don't work for free. So really any sort of movement, even if it's unintentional movement or if it's a chore or whatever, I mean, that all counts.
Yeah.
So just making the most of your day and being mindful of, we've gotten so used to technology and being efficient, trying to rethink some of those tasks so that we can bring activity back in.
Yeah.
And then what about sleep? Sleep plays a huge role in how we feel, our energy levels, and in all the things. So, how does sleep play a role in weight management?
Yeah, and I definitely think that sleep is one of the ones that people are always surprised that I ask them about when it comes to their first appointment, because why would that have anything to do with it, you know? But really it does. It affects those appetite hormones, just like we talked about with blood sugar too, right? The other half of that is those appetite hormones. So increasing hunger, decreasing satiety is usually what happens when we get too little of sleep. So we want to try to get at least 7 hours of restful sleep each night, and that restful portion is really important, right? If we're sleeping for 9 hours, but it's not really good quality sleep, that's still going to have a big impact on those hormones.
Yeah, absolutely. Sleep is a big deal. And anybody who's been tired or maybe stayed up late trying to study or had newborn babies, we all know that affects our appetite. Maybe you have that eating or snacking in the middle of the night to try to keep yourself up. You rely more on caffeine possibly, and the such. So yeah, getting adequate sleep is super important. So, any last closing remarks in regards to what people can do for sustainable weight loss and helping them along their journey?
Yeah, I just think that, right, we have all these different puzzle pieces that we've talked about today, and we need all of them to have that sustainable weight loss happen. Slow, steady, safe weight loss. And so getting all those pieces of the puzzle in together, that's that key there.
Absolutely. If anybody is on a weight loss journey and they need the assistance of a dietitian, please feel free to reach out. We have a team of dietitians that have different specialties, different personalities. We will definitely try to pair you with the dietitian that best meets your needs and your journey. Um, Hope you guys all have a great day and check in with us